everyone. Welcome to the No Walls podcast.
We here. We doing it.
We are excited. Quick disclaimer. If you're watching on the video, you can probably already tell. But if not, we are not in our normal place. We are not in our normal studio. We are in, where are we at, Taylor?
We are in Dallas.
Dallas, Texas.
God's country.
God's country. I was about to say that. So if the audio sounds a little weird or if the video isn't great, just bear with us for this week, and we'll be back in our normal spot next week. All right, so we went to a couple cool churches since we've been here. Or we went to one so far. We went to Upperroom. We're about to go to Social Dallas.
Yes, we are.
And I'm so freaking excited about it. But we've already been to Upperroom, so I was curious if you guys had some takeaways that you wanted to share on the podcast before we hop into some of the other questions that I have. Do you have any takeaways from Upperroom?
I do. Their worship was super cool. That's the main reason I wanted to go. It's not their worship pastor, but a main person that worships there is Abby Gamboa, and that was the initial drive to go to Upperroom, is to see her in action. But she happened to be in London this week, but it was still super cool to see the people on the stage that they had worshiping. And my main takeaway was how well they flowed, and that's what I want to take home. I want to just try that out when we get home.
So what stood out about their flow for you? How would you describe the feel in that room? How is it any different than somewhere else?
It just didn't feel performative. They were just worshiping. I didn't even I caught myself not even looking at them. They didn't demand attention. They weren't even facing, their body language was literally like this in reference to the camera. And I thought that was really cool. I've never seen anything like that at all. It's usually lights are going crazy and everyone is standing and looking at the crowd, and it feels like they're demanding your attention usually. But they were not at all. They were sitting in chairs, and their instrumentalists were all sitting in chairs, and I just really digged it.
Yeah.
How would
you describe what it felt like in the room? How do you think the crowd's response to worship was in reference to other places? Anything unique about that stood out?
I just feel like they felt free. They didn't feel nervous about worship. They were just so free to do whatever they wanted. There were people sitting down, which I've never really seen in churches that I've been. They were all standing up. They were 30% of the room just sitting down and worship, and then another part of the room was dancing, full-on choreography in the front, and then people just kind of standing there with their eyes closed, and then a bunch of people responding with their hands up. And I just felt like they weren't following any rules or any structure.
Yeah, I'm with you. No, I think that I had a beautiful time. I think there's two things that stood out to me the most about Upperroom. I think the first one is a lot of what you're saying, and I think the phrase I would use for worship is it just really felt undone.
Yeah.
It was allowed to be what it needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we could attend 10 of those in a row, and all 10 would have a different flair or a different feel, or the way it would move from place to place would look a little different. And for really high structure people, that would be really difficult. But there was something about being in that room where it's it just didn't need to be. Like you said, it wasn't performative. And it's the aesthetics of the room, they weren't terrible, but they weren't you could tell nobody came through here and was how do we make this the most breathtaking experience? It felt like a bunch of people wanted to worship together. I think what was so, for me, beautiful about the way the room felt was it felt like everyone was in. It felt like the equivalent of a spiritual kumbaya bonfire. Mm-hmm. The people in the crowd were as much a participant as the people on the stage were. Mm-hmm. And that was really unique. There's not many moments, and I've been doing church for a while now. Specifically, I've been in the charismatic side for a long time, and I don't know that there's been very many moments where it felt like we were all together.
Yeah.
We were being led, but we weren't. It was. I don't know how to describe that. Undone's the only word I know to do it. It's like someone came in and just took all the wrapping off and just, we all like beheld the present.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you woke up on Christmas morning and the present was there, like just in front of you. You could just jump right into playing with it. That was really unique. And the other thing that was really spectacular to me was just their culture. Like, they're unique. They have a unique culture. There are things about their culture that, I mean, you'd pick out immediately, like, wow, that's different. Like, we wouldn't maybe do it the same way. But what was clear is everyone was in the culture. And man, I will always tip my cap anywhere that has the culture bleeding all the way down from the top to the people serving. Like, me and Preston were in there waiting for the experience stop while you were getting a coffee. And one of the host team people, now not the host team pastor, not the or like first impressions team, not the pastor. We're talking like, her name was Cynthia, just regular Joe Blow. She said she'd only been attending there maybe a year and a half, and had just started serving. Comes alongside, sits down next to us, not talking at us. Legit grabs the seat next to us. It was low key kind of weird, but like, I dig it. Grabs the seat right next to us and then just starts chatting us up, where we're from, what our names are, what are we doing in Dallas, why are we here, wanting to hear all of our story, and then takes all of the data, like everything we just said to her, and is like, can I pray with you? And then like packages a specific, intentionally thought through prayer for Preston and I, two people she'd never met. There was no cameras. There was like, no one was watching. It was just in the house, like in the room, in the culture, that we connect and we pray with people. And man, I'm obsessed. Like, I love the idea that all the way down to your fringe areas of a church, it's just in the heartbeat of who the people are. I think it's incredible. Yeah.
I with what you said at first, what was your first point? How it just felt like kind of group led almost. There was a point where the person leading the song kind of stopped singing and the room started the verse again, and so she started again.
Oh yeah.
And I thought it was so cool. Like, I don't know if there's many places that they could like even trust their congregation like that. Like, they were all leading together, and like, we took them somewhere at a point, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, what's also unique is I think a lot of people would walk in that room and use a phrase like chaotic if you were watching it like on a YouTube channel. But once you're in it, like when you're, I don't know how any other way to describe this. I'm doing a terrible job of formulating words. It looks messy until you're in it, and it feels right. It feels like it feels like the difference between like if you went to somebody's home you didn't know and there was stuff everywhere, maybe it would make you feel a type of way. But like if you're spending a weekend at your grandma's house and there's toys everywhere, it's like lived in. It's like it's home, it's familiar. There was something about the quote unquote chaotic way the room was that made you feel like you were coming home to grandma's house. Yeah. Like you were part of the family. There were kids running around, which like as a general rule just kind of stresses me out. But you don't notice it. And I notice, I would like to consider myself a fairly detailed oriented guy, especially for experiences when I'm coming to study how you're doing a thing. And it just became like almost part of the experience. Such a weird, it's so hard to articulate, but it felt like I was at grandma's house. There were kids running around, people were playing. Yeah. And it worked. It doesn't make it, I actually think if you watch the video back of that experience, you would be a little on like, ugh. But if you were in the room, doesn't land that way at all. Yeah. Kids running around, like it was, but like, it was like a baptism experience. There was a kid like touching the baptism pool and just kind of, like they have an LED wall. And like before the experience, the kids found the fact that they could see their faces on the LED wall. So they're front and center with like the very front of the, like right in front of the stage, and they're like being goofy on camera, and like that would drive me crazy, except it didn't. And it's like, it's so wild. It was very, very unique. I've never quite been in a place that felt quite like that. Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was interesting was their worship didn't seem bound to like their building. Like what I mean by that is like I think that there's certain things that like like you do in worship or you do in experience, and it's not a necessity, it's a luxury. And I feel like they had everything they had were just luxuries, not necessities. Like I feel like you could take away their microphones, I feel like you could take away their lights, I feel like you could take away everything in that room and still have like a really powerful worship experience. And I thought that was like an interesting like thing. Like I don't think you needed the people obviously on the stage that could sing excellent and like all that stuff was incredible. But I do feel like if you just got that group of people in any room and we're like, we're gonna worship, then I think the room would turn the way that it did in that moment. Like it was pretty crazy to see that. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really, really cool experience.
Yeah, I really like. There's like a thing there. The idea of something being a necessity versus a luxury.
Mm.
I think you nailed it. I just like it feels like there's something to that. Like it's wild how many things I think if you're like a part of anything and you're trying to do it really, really well and you're hungry and you want to kind of grow your business, you want to build your church, you want to build people, however that Venn diagram lays out for you, you get in a process of continually trying to improve a thing that you start thinking things have to be there for the thing to be the thing it was. Mm-hmm. And like what's beautiful about the church is you can strip it all away. Yeah. As long as you have people talking about a really good Jesus, you can make this thing work. Yeah. And it felt like that was so true in that room. Yeah, it did. I think there could have been a power outage. Yeah. And we're in the pitch black, and I think people would have never stopped singing. Yeah. Like, it just didn't matter. I mean, they had an LED wall, so they had some cool things. It's not that it wasn't like, obviously they care about the way it looks to some extent, or you don't spend money on an LED wall. Yeah. But, like, they were accent pieces. They were never the main dish. Yeah, that's good. And that's unique, man. Like, that's a cool perception. I don't think I caught that. And I love the idea that, like, we'll add things so long as they accent. They're never the main dish. Yeah. All you need for the church to work is messy people chasing a perfect Jesus authentically. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what that felt like. It's super cool.
It felt like their like main goal was worship, and then they happened to be singing. That's what it felt like. They were like, our goal is to worship Jesus, and like we happened to be singing too. That just, it like, even like the talent was like, they were good, but it was just like, that is not what they were chasing. They weren't even chasing like cool runs or cool vocal jumps and flips, but it just felt like we'll worship and we happen to be singing cool songs too.
Yeah, it was special. Man, it was a cool feel. It was a cool feel. I think anytime you can get the gap, Preston said this on the way back, that it felt like there wasn't a fourth wall. And I thought that was a really like interesting takeaway. The idea that like the best way, like Sesame Street, the Wiggles, where like you're partaking in the thing, there really was no fourth wall. And I think anytime, specifically in the church context, anytime you can eliminate that, the experience is going to feel truest. Yeah. Like when we feel like we're dialoguing with people instead of talking at people from a sermon standpoint, those are the best sermons, right? Then you feel like you're with them. Like we happen to be in a building, but this could be a coffee shop and it would feel the same way. Like anytime that's happening, I think you have found a special moment. And I think if there is a thing that they do better than almost anyone I've ever met, is I bet that's how it always feels. Yeah. It always feels like there's really no fourth wall. Like we're in this thing together, and I think that's beautiful.
I think the other thing that does is if you grow up in that, if you were in that all the time, you really do feel like God isn't bound to that building. And I think sometimes like whenever, or at least whenever like I've grown up in church and stuff, it is a little like I come to church because that's where I meet God at. And I think when you get in those rooms, I could see it very quickly getting in you that like, no, God is actually with me wherever, like everywhere. And I think that was part of the aesthetic that I liked, is like you walk in and it's like, oh, this really could be like a coffee shop. This really could be a Walmart. This could be anything that it is. And if we all get together and we start worshiping God, like where two or more gathered, like there he is, like that. It really felt like that. And so
that's super neat. It's like because like church traditionally, this isn't like a shot, it just kind of is what it is. Like, and I think there are beautiful things that are happening. Traditionally, at least in my experience, it feels like you said, we're coming to church to meet God, to talk to God. What's unique about that room is it feels like everybody came to church to celebrate what they had been seeing God do for the last 6 days.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a different thing.
Yeah.
Like they weren't like, it didn't feel like they were coming in dragging.
Yeah.
They came in ready.
Yeah.
Like this thing wasn't revving them up. It was like topping the tank off.
Yeah.
Like, it's like they had spent all week long filling up so that when they got in the room, it was a room full of people who were just really excited about who God was. And it doesn't mean there weren't people struggling. Obviously, in any room there are. And there are moments where people are getting prayed for. But the way the room felt was like, I could borrow your strength.
Yeah.
Like, so the majority of this room was here to celebrate, to lift up, to acknowledge, like, dude, God's just been good this week.
Yeah.
And for the percentage of the room, it was like, this has been a hard week. You could just see there was strength to pull from.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we really, we were walking this thing together, and the way that room feels is different.
Yeah.
When you aren't coming on Sunday to get your one day a week in with Jesus, but you're coming in on Sunday because the last 6 days you've been walking with him.
Yeah.
And this is your chance to do it with other people.
Yeah.
It's just a cool feel.
Yeah, it
was.
was
Cool.
It was super cool.
How would we bring that home?
That's a great question. I'm still kind of chewing on some of that because like there are some benefits that you get afforded when like you have the one mind, one accord concept, right? So everybody in that room has probably grown up like that for a while, and so there's some strength to that. I think my theory is I think what you have to do if you want something to feel the way that felt, right? And I think we probably lean a little bit more that way. Kind of trying to cultivate more and more intimacy with the way that worship feels. Not so much that like people need to run in circles or have flags or whatever else that you might add to make an experience like really charismatic, but that there's like this sense that like we are deeply connected to Jesus and that this is more than like a song just to sing, but like he is in this moment interacting with us. I think the thing starts with curiosity. I think whatever team exists, if you're speaking specifically to the worship side, like the team has to be curious. And I think generally speaking, I think that is the first domino that hasn't fallen in most places. Like I can think of like 10 people off the top of my head that if we'd have brought with us would have hated every second because it wasn't their specific cup of tea. Right? So you wouldn't have been able to see the things that you did like because you were so fixated on the things that didn't look like what you're used to. Right? So for us, it's like there are things about their flow that I just don't think there's a world in which I would do. But like just because it looked different doesn't mean I can't get something from it. And that concept, like what if it is though? Like what if it's fantastic? Like what if like a clip I see from the thing is like, I know I'm not gonna like that place. Like but you don't though, because like we said a second ago, if you would have watched the video of that room, I think there's a lot of people who would not think they would enjoy it, except that when you showed up in the room, you felt it was very different in person than that camera could ever capture. Curiosity got us in a room we might not have otherwise gone to. Curiosity set us up to be able to experience a really cool moment that coming in with our opinion solidified would have robbed us of also. But I think the key is building curious teams. Like the idea that you will spend a lifetime following and learning about who Jesus is. I think the more central that belief is, the easier it is to get to cultivate rooms and moments like that because we actually believe there's new aspects of who God is for us. It's not that God's adding a new flavor to himself. It's that we're seeing more of who he is. Right? The longer you stare at something, the more it impacts who you are. Like there's a communicator that I've listened to a lot, and he talks about how like with Jesus, like when you behold who he is, you are slowly becoming who he is. And there's something about the the desire to see and unwrap and learn more and more who he is, that has like this correlating effect on the person that you are. The more curious a worship team is, the freer I think the room will be.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah, if we're always, I think part of curiosity is also like assessing.
Yeah.
And so like if you're always coming off of worship sets, like, did y'all see how that room felt? What was different about that room? What happened? What was different that set up the way that and sometimes like for trying to find tangibles in rooms like that is kind of difficult. So like, like being like, well, we played these chords, so like that's why God moved. It's like, well, not necessarily, but like one of the things that they have is like a whole worship school. Yeah. And I'd be so interested to see like what it looks like to be in there and see like what is being taught. And like one of the ways that you can see like the benefit of the worship school is their singers all have like a thumbprint on them. That was what was interesting to me too, is it's like, and probably they're instrumentalists too. I mean, I can get to see enough of them like play, and I'm not as like, it's a little bit harder to pick up on, but like their vocalists all had a very specific style and a very specific, even like when they were exhorting and stuff, there was like a flow to the way they did it. There was like not necessarily a cadence. There's like a tone to the way that they did it. It was really interesting to like see that. I was wondering, like, do you think that when you're building teams like that, like, does that thumbprint have to exist, or can teams look like more like to have like the one mind, one accord? Does that thumbprint have to be a thing?
I don't think the thumbprint has to be a thing, but I think it always is a thing. Right when like, I'm sure if you laid every version of however, I'm sure they have an endless number of combinations of teams. I bet in all of those teams, you laid them side by side, there would be some uniquenesses, right? Unique qualities. I don't know if uniqueness is, I'm pretty sure that's not a word. Unique qualities about them. For the most part, though, like what winds up happening is you follow someone as they follow Christ. Is what Paul talks about, right? There's just a natural order to the way that things work. When you find a place, you find a person that you do life with intimately enough, and they're helping you lead and learn how to experience God in a very specific way, you're just gonna have a thumbprint. It doesn't have to have one. It could look 1,000 different ways. I just think the natural product of doing life closely just comes with a thumbprint, right? So like Abby could build like 1,000 teams. I think they're all going to have some very specific things about them that is just consistent. Like there's no way around it. Like they're still uniquely themselves, but you could catch it, the things that were like, oh, there's Abby. That makes sense. That trickled down. Okay, Abby does that too. That makes sense. And like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think there's something really beautiful about that, because I think that's God working this beautiful thread through like the generations of what he's building through people, right? Like there should be some similarities in Jacob that you saw in Abraham. A good father hands his son something that's worth carrying. For sure. And so you're going to see a thread between every iteration of a team if it's being led well, I think. It's just my theory.
That's good.
Back to Fallon's question, I was thinking about something. I was trying to think of like how you would cultivate the room, like how you would bring that home. And so I was like, all right, I've got a few ideas. So I think curiosity is a big one. I think the second one is I do not think you can substitute actual time with Jesus. And I don't know any of their lives, and I could be way wrong on this, right? Because again, like I said, I do not know them. But I don't think you can fake intimacy. I just don't, right? Like you can tell when like people dating don't like each other. You can tell when husbands and wives aren't having a good time. Like you can tell when kids don't like their parents. Like you can come in here and act a certain way, but if I watch you long enough, like I'm going to see the real you. And man, I think every person on that stage, from the guitarist all the way down to the person leading the worship song, like everything in between, it felt like they knew Jesus. Like they had some moments with him, like some experiences. I think if you're trying to cultivate room to feel like that. Spiritual intensity is just part of it. And we can quibble all day long on what it looks like to cultivate that, or what's the line between telling people to do a Devo and legalism. It's like, listen, I should not have to talk you into wanting to know Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't, the way a team is built has a lot to do with that. So like, I don't think they're having to like, I think the reason people get uncomfortable with talking about trying to cultivate spiritual intensity in people, because it feels like you're trying to create like a checklist.
Yeah.
You got to read this many verses, or get this many devos in, or listen to this much worship music. It's like, no, it's not about that. Like, you should be curious enough on the front side that I actually would never need to follow you back up on the back side, because like, you are longing to know him. Doesn't mean we don't have low seasons, hard times. Doesn't mean we don't encourage our people to know Jesus.
Yeah.
But it's like, if we are all endeavoring the best we can to know him a little bit more, I think that thing is just going to spill out in a worship experience, right? Like, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The more I spend with my personal relationship with Jesus, the more natural it is going to be for that to kind of spill out into itself. And so I think
for sure,
you would want to find whatever that looks like in a team. Build curiosity about who God is, and then just have conversations about what he's doing in your life amongst you as people, as a team, because it's going to wind up spilling to the people in the room. So it's like sharing personal stories of like, man, this week, here's what God's been saying to me. Here's what he's been showing me. Here's something that stood out to me this week. Like, even like the tiniest little, most simple things like that. Like, here's a nugget I got, or here's a worship song I listened to that I think just like, y'all imagine if we would do this or put this here. Like,
yeah,
I think the way you know someone's in a really good space, especially from like the spiritual context, like as far as like a worship team or inside the church, is like they keep bringing you things they're interested in. Like, the best example I have of this is like years ago, a good friend of all of ours, Taylor Goodman, started playing worship, and like he's kind of like in a unique season, but you started seeing when this thing became really real for him.
Yeah.
Because it felt like every week the dude had a new way he wanted to tweak a song.
Yeah.
Or try a different thing. And that thing is super contagious. And I think the more a team has that, I think the more likely you're going to create some spaces. And the third thing for me that's unique to them, and I haven't got to flesh out practically exactly how to do this, but eliminating the watch and see and the come and taste. Like switching from watch and see to come and taste. Like, what worship traditionally feels like is we're going to sing a song, you're going to watch us sing it, and then we're going to get into a sermon here in a minute.
Yeah.
Versus like, see this really delicious apple?
Yeah.
What if you took a bite?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what if you partook of what's happening? What if you were a part of the thing happening? And that could look like pulling out the vocals and forcing the room to sing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we'd do a chorus, sing it 3 times. On the 4th chorus, we back off and we just let them go. It could look like conversations about what's about to take place. Like, hey, here's the song we're singing. Here's where I want your head to be. Here's where I want your heart to be. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways. But I think if you can combine the 3, I think you'll wind up getting something similar to the way that room feels. Deeply curious worship leaders will create a deeply curious people. Deeply passionate worship leaders will create a deeply passionate people. Building an experience so that those people feel like they're part of it will create a room that participates in worship.
Yeah, that's good.
That's my theory.
I think that's good. I think one of the, like, kind of piggybacking off of that, one of the other things, and you're the one that actually had pointed this out, was how much like Bible knowledge was in
the baptisms.
Yeah, you had people. The way they did baptisms was epic. Like, it was super dope. But like, everyone would get into the pool, and then like the band was like flowing as the transition was happening. So like, people would, like, this person got baptized, they're stepping out of the pool. As this person was stepping out of the pool, the band would vamp back up, and like, you're having like a chorus sang or whatever as this person's getting into the pool. As they get into the pool, it goes back down, it's silent again, and then they have a microphone and they hand it, or it's not silent, there's like music playing behind them, and they hand the mic, or they point the microphone to the person in the pool, and they're just like, what are you leaving in the water today? And like, they'd be
that
like,
question, bro.
Yeah.
Can we just settle on that for a second? That question was wild.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. If there's a thing from their baptism that I'm hard pitching Jared when I get back, even if we don't put a microphone in the face the way they did, I want to ask every person I dunk for the rest of my life, what are you leaving in this water?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I love
that.
Yeah.
that fed my soul. It made something that's already super unbelievably symbolic, super intentional, like a whole extra level of like, no, I'm doing this. Like, that doesn't even mean I'm not going to feel tempted to pick it back up tomorrow, but like today, where my head and my heart is, this is what I'm chasing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obsessed.
And like some of them were, were like, I'm leaving fear and sin in the water. I'm leaving my old self in the water, whatever. But like, there were a good chunk of them that were like, Colossians 3:2 says, Psalm 132 verse 19 says, and they were just like rattling off just like 4 or 5 scriptures before they get baptized. I was like, that is freaking dope. Like, I don't know if that is like the way their sermons are structured. They just put a large emphasis on like memorization, or if like to get to that pool, like there's a certain amount of like Bible study that has to be done like communally, or like what that looks like. But that is something that like I want to bring back home. So I want to put, maybe not necessarily like in Switch or whatever, but for myself, like it like inspired me. It felt like it challenged me to like out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. Like, get that stuff in your heart. Like, and on moments whenever there are hard days and stuff like that, like you have something to pull on, you have scriptures to pull on, and I have a few, right? But like to have like the depth that it seemed like they did have, it was pretty cool to me, and I was like, that's something I want to try to bring home. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. It felt like it really felt like they were like, especially like an experience, like we are definitely like a seeker friendly church, and I'll never apologize for that. It's like our core value. Sure. Anything short of sin to reach people who do not know Christ. That means we are trying to seek people. It kind of puts it like, there's no sense in like saying that it's who we are, it's what we do. I love it, and I don't want to change anything about it. What's unique though, because in the way that we do that, there can be experiences where people almost feel like the emotions are so high, so you can get like someone can make an emotional decision. Now baptism's a harder one to do that with, because like you're like standing in front of a whole room full of people. Like I don't know that baptism falls necessarily in the category of like I made an emotional decision, but it's possible. Yeah. But I was so encouraged by some of that. Is like, it felt like some of those people had tested it. Like scripture had been forming them. Like it wasn't just a sermon they heard. Of course, someone gave like a great pitch for why baptism matters. It felt like these people were really trying to seek and find like who Jesus is. And scripture talks about seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. And it felt like these jokers were knocking some doors. Like they had spent some time trying to figure out who God was, what this meant for them. And I think it isn't to say that like every baptism we do or anyone else does isn't good enough. It's an observation. It's just really interesting to see. You had like 50 baptisms, and of those 50 baptisms, I'm not sure that like 10 to 12 of them didn't have like a deep like this scripture changed their life. Like they weren't reading scripture because like the moment called for it, because they were all unique. You could tell that whatever that passage was deeply impacted who they were as a person. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts was like a handful of them shared like a snippet of their testimony, and they were so vulnerable with that, just sharing that to the whole room. And I've never seen anything like it. Like they were just spilling their crap. I was like, holy crap. And like there was not like an inch of like judgment in the room. They were just celebrating. And I don't know what that looks like if someone like was teaching them how to share their testimony, or they were just super excited about what Jesus has done in their life and they wanted to share it. And I loved that part.
Yeah, there's something about giving someone it's risky. Listen, I've been in a lot of testimony services. Some people be saying stuff like, I don't think God did that, man. Like I don't think we're gonna give him credit for that. But like for all of the for all the qualms and things that can go south, I don't know, man. It's different. Like hearing someone articulate what the moment means to them.
Yeah.
Is really powerful. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure that means we change everything we do, but there's just, it's beautiful. Yeah. Like the realness and the rawness of that moment was been. There was a moment at baptism that was interesting to me. I think we are a rowdy bunch on baptism Sundays. Okay, I mean, it like honestly, short of like Jared Callahan, like baptism Sundays when I knew this place was for me. All right, so like I knew, like I was gonna attend because I trusted Jared, but like that was the experience at TheBrick.Church that had me hooked. Never seen anything like it. So we are a rowdy bunch. What was really cool because one of the dudes got baptized, and I mean he had a squad of like 8 dudes. And I mean, like, they did not care that anyone else was in the room. Like, these guys had, like, and I don't know what their story is. I wanted to find them, and I couldn't. I literally lost who they were. But you could tell that these guys, there was a relationship. Like, I don't know if they had been praying for this dude for years, weeks, months, or they just do life together. But there was such a, like, interpersonal connected relationship in the room as a whole, and like the shining jewel of it was that moment where these 8 dudes are like, they're beating out the worship team, which are piped into speakers. Yeah. And you almost can't hear the music because it feels like we're at a football stadium. Cool. It's the Red River rivalry. And like, it's 3 minutes left to go and the team just scored the game-winning touchdown. 3 seconds ago, the game-winning touchdown. Like, they lost their minds. And I was like, I don't know, man. For a place that I think we do a really good job of celebrating people get dunked, they made me want to up my game even more. I'm not gonna lie. Like, cool. I mean, they took it to a level that I'm like, I am going to intentionally make sure that I bring even more energy and excitement. Some of that you can't duplicate because like of how close they are. Yeah. But I think that's the part that like aside of all the things where I said, the other thing that for me that really strong that I would love to take home is just, and I think it's something you're always going to chase. Like it'll never be as connected as you want. But man, the deep interpersonal connection, person to person, I think it's just a unique thing to feel that. I don't know any of them. It felt like I was part of their family. And I would like to think that like some of that is true for us. Like you come to break, you feel like you're part. But I mean, it really was different. Like I think these people do life together. Like it's not a show. It just, I think it's just like out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. I think these people really, really, really love their people, and you can just feel it. And so for whatever things may not fit your cup of tea, no one showed up that day and didn't feel like they could sit at the table. And I thought that was wild.
What are y'all most excited for about Social Dallas? Do you have anything specific you're going into to look for, or anything specific that you're excited about?
I've got a few things for me, but they're really practical. So I would say Upperroom for me was about catching how something felt. So for my type A type people, you probably hate that whole bit, but like it just is what it is. I was trying to catch, not so much be taught. Some of those things I don't know. Fallon tried to have a conversation with the guy, and he could tell he was.
That was crazy.
Tell me about that combo.
I walked up to the stage to talk to someone. I had a couple questions about how they run things, and I caught this guy going off the stage. I was like, "Hey, I have a couple questions," and I asked what system they run their click and track through, and he was like, "Well, we don't use a track, but we do have a click in our ears." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I was like, "What does your practice look like? Like, do you come in with a set list, or do you just like come and worship? And what does that look like?" He was like, "Well." So sometimes we have a set, and we practice that set during practice, and then the next day we just do a different set. And I was like, okay. I was like, so like, did every song tonight, was that planned? And he was like, I don't really know. It just kind of depends. Like, I like a set list sometimes, but it just depends. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to practically apply any of that. And I was like, do you have talent in-house? Like, do you do auditions? He was like, we try to stay in-house, but, like, we'll do some auditions. And he was just very, like, you just kind of have to do it. Like, you just have to worship together. And I was like, okay, so just do it. That's what I got. I got no practical application at all. Just to send it. But that was funny.
Yeah, no, that's what Upperroom. That's where my head was coming in. Like, I just did not think almost anyone was going to be able to give me an answer how they did it. It just kind of was what it was. And I'm not saying you should lead your businesses, churches, lives like that. It just works for them. I feel like if they were to say what is the philosophy of their ministry, they would say it's come and taste, come and see. That's it. Like, I mean, I really feel like that's it. Like, I may be wrong. They may have a ton of steps that I have no idea. But, like, I just think it's all about, it's like, we just trust God to get to you, so you just come. Stick in the room long enough, and you'll catch what's happening. So for me, that's kind of what Upperroom was all about. Was like, I just wanted to feel the room, come with an open mind, open heart, and ask God, like, all right, God, what can I take? What can I use? And give me vision on where to start. I don't need to know, the whole formula, but just like, what's the first, like, give me the PEMDAS.
Yeah.
I'll work the formula out for myself. But where do I start? Yeah. You're welcome. Y'all didn't know you was getting mentally educated too. Hashtag school.
Hashtag school.
But to answer your question, Social Dallas, this one's a lot more practical for me. I'm really fascinated to see what a setup looks like. Like, what does it look like to build something? Because they're mobile. So I'm really fascinated to see, like, what's it visually look like? How much of them setting up still is happening when we get there? Right, we're gonna get there an hour earlier. Like, how soon is that done? How fast is it done? Super fascinated by that. It's outside, so I'm really curious what that's like. Like, what is it? How, like, I would assume they're going to do that well. Yeah. So I wonder what that looks like, because, like, the church is growing, and because student ministry is growing, we might have to, like, really start brainstorming some different concepts. Yeah. So I'm super fascinated just to be in a mobile experience that's done with excellence, that excellence matters, and what it feels like to be outside. Super interested in that. And then specifically, I want to know what the volunteers, the leaders are like. Because I've never done something mobile, but the thing I'm curious of is what's the cost of that? To do mobile every single week, how does that drain your leaders? Does it drain your leaders? I'm coming in ready to watch all the host team, right? All the worship team, all the tech team, all the parking lot team. Like, I just want to see where their heads are at. And it's their baptism Sunday. So I'm super fascinated on how they're going to do that. It sounds like a wild time to me. So, I mean, listening to Robert Madu is cool too. So I'm not sad about the communicator. It's just, for me, I'm very excited about the rest of the things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think I'm excited about the extremes that I think we are about to see, like, going from Upperroom to Social Dallas.
I bet it's very different.
Yeah, like, Robert seems like a very structured person. Like I imagine that, like, transitions are gonna be like just like on a dime. Like, just this happens like this. Maybe, I mean, I'm not even gonna say maybe not. The transitions are gonna be super well thought out, and, like, probably, like, on a
definitely more so than Upperroom.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like most of the time when you have like a super, like when you have like a world-class communicator like that, that's just kind of part of their flow. I think is just think through transitions and stuff. And so I'm excited to see that. That's one of the most interesting things to me when we go to different churches is the transitions. Like, I wouldn't have thought to get from there to there that way. Or, like, it's weird you have a talking piece in between the third worship song and you do a fourth worship song. Like, just things like that is interesting. I'm excited to see the flow. See how all that goes. And then on top of all the mobile stuff, just because of, where we're at and stuff. So I'm excited for that. Do you have anything you're excited for?
I'm excited for their worship. I've never seen it. I've seen one worship night. Chandler Moore was there. I don't know if he's still there or not, but I kind of...
You're right. I'm fascinated by that too.
I kind of have, like, no idea what we're going into for the worship side, but I'm excited just to go and see what I can take away from it. But
same.
And Robert Madu. I really like Robert Madu. And Taylor Madu. Yeah. I love her. I'm so excited. But yeah.
I think we're getting close to that time. We low key need to pack up and roll.
This has been just the Let's Nerd Out on Church Stuff podcast.
Yeah. So if you came in today looking for a secular piece of content, this is not it. Yeah. But it is a No Walls podcast. We're part of a church. Like, if you didn't think you're just going to sprinkle in, like, someone didn't set you up properly for what we are.
Yeah,
but they're not all church oriented. So if you just found us for the first time, like, we usually have a little bit more practical application for your Monday to Tuesday, but we decided we're in the middle of inspiration, so why not shoot a podcast?
Yeah, for sure.
If you like to geek out in church or interested at all, this was the one for you, and we are super thankful you're here. Also, now would be a beautiful time, especially if you made it all the way through the video. Like that bad boy, subscribe that thing, share it like crazy. Let's keep building it, because our prayer from the jump is to get the church to have no walls, and that's what this is. We want to get the conversations about who Jesus is and how he's affecting our lives to the people around us. So like, subscribe, share. Thank you for being part of the family and sitting with us in our unique mobile setup.
For sure. Thank you guys for talking with me today.
Love you
guys.